MCU Guy and welcome to the MCU podcast. This month we're doing things slightly different. Instead of having a guest and a topic of discussion, I'm actually going to be breaking down my least favourite MCU film all the way to my favourite MCU film. It's something that I've been wanting to do for quite a while, and with not a lot going on at the moment in the MCU, I figured this is probably the best time to do it. So before we get into that though, I will actually throw a few things out there that we need to obviously address. Big MCU news, the little news we have. First of all, reshuffles and delays. As you probably know, Black Widow, Shang-Chi and Eternals have all been delayed all till next year, which sucks. But to be fair, I think most people knew that this was going to happen. We were just kind of hoping that it wouldn't. It's frustrating for me and for obviously a lot of people over in the UK who feel that we could have had a cinema release. Obviously, we're not out of the woods yet with COVID, but we're doing a lot better than some other countries, and we are actually having people go to the cinema. I've been to the cinema myself. I went to watch Tenet, and it was a strange experience, but you still got to watch the film and still got to enjoy it. So I was really, really banking on Black Widow coming out next month, but lo and behold, they've been pushed back again. One slightly good thing out of this though is the fact that we are still getting WandaVision this year, probably in December, which it's going to be strange to have a show kick off Phase 4, but you know what, I'm just excited for any sort of MCU content. Just stick it in my veins. I'm not bothered. I'll take anything right now. Also, the trailer looks dope, so I'm more excited about this show than I was probably this time last year. So just bring it on. I'm very excited. The next bit of news, we have the announcement that Nick Fury is going to get his first MCU show, or it's a show, yeah. Everything is just going to be about Nick Fury, and what a character to choose. Like, there's so much to unpack there. There's so much storylines and so many different things you can get into. I think all arrows seem to point towards Agents of Sword storyline, which, if you think about where he was at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, it makes a lot of sense to have that. One thing that people are starting to talk about is the potential return of some of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Quake being the big one, due to the fact that she was actually in space when we left Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and she could have quite clearly be out there to join Nick and his operations up there on the space station. So if that happens and she just come back, that's amazing. But regardless, Nick Fury having his own show, that's going to be mint, and there's so many opportunities, so many different possibilities we can go down, and endless rabbit holes, and that's I'm really excited about that. Apart from the likes of the Hawkeye and She-Hulk, Falcon Winter Soldier and WandaVision, I'd say that's probably one of the most exciting shows up there, really. I'm very excited about that. Oh, and Loki looks good for what we've seen so far, that 2-second clip. But yeah, so that's basically the big MCU news for this month. Hopefully next month we'll get back into some more news with a guest or guests, and we'll go for there. But before we get into the breakdown of my least favourite MCU films to my favourite MCU films, I'm just going to take a quick second to ask you, if you like this podcast and you enjoy what I do, please give us a rating if you can on whatever pod platform you use, or if you watch the video on YouTube or Facebook, just share it, like it, tell people about it. The more people who listen to the pod, the better, and it means that we can get a bigger audience, which means I can do more stuff and have more guests on, and it just makes the whole thing a lot more enjoyable for myself as well, if I know that more people are out there listening to what we're talking about. So again, if you do it, make sure you give us a view. 5 stars only though. But obviously any feedback, any reviews are welcome. Also, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the MCU Guy on Facebook and Instagram, the MCU Guy UK on Twitter. Make sure you buy a t-shirt on the Etsy page, the MCU Guy. You can get one of your favourite MCU Guy t-shirts with the MCU character quotes. That'd be really cool if you bought one of them. That'd be awesome. We also have a Patreon if anyone wants to help me buy better equipment so I can do better and more extravagant stuff. That'd be much appreciated. You can find us on Patreon at the MCU Guy. Thanks again for watching, and let's get into the breakdown.
Hi, I'm Matt and this is Matt. We're both 30-somethings and we're fighting the good fight against constant threats of incoming midlife crisis. If you're in the same boat, or if you just enjoy other people's confusion and suffering, why not get involved? Join us as we stumble through the big questions like, why do my hangovers last a week now? And how music's been getting steadily worse since I was 20 years old, and that is a stone cold fact.
But that's not it. We want you to get involved. Why not get in touch? You might be able to suggest a topic of discussion, if you have any worries about ageing, or any funny stories that you have related to turning 30. You can email us at ThatMCUGuyUK@gmail.com or at any of the links below. Find the What's My Head Again podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
And welcome back. Now I'm going to break down my list of the MCU films from worst to best. Now, obviously, my choices are my own opinion. These are based on just how I enjoy the films and how I interpret the films. Obviously, you're not going to have the exact same idea and list as me, which is totally fine. And I'm very much open to letting you guys criticise my list and tell me where I'm wrong, and obviously tell me yours as well. I will actually go over some of our listeners' lists of the bottom three and the top three a little bit later in the show, but I'm now just going to get into breaking down the films. Coming in at number 23, the only MCU film that to me doesn't actually feel like an MCU film, The Incredible Hulk. It's not a bad film. None of these are really bad films. It's just there's a feel of this film that doesn't feel like it's part of the MCU. It obviously is part of the MCU because there's lots of stuff that happens in it that does impact the MCU, and there's lots of Easter eggs and references, and obviously Tony Stark turning up at the end, and Thunderbolt Ross throughout the whole of the Infinite Saga. He obviously has a big part and probably will do going forward in Phase 4. But it's just there's just something I'm not awfully keen on. It doesn't really sit well for me as a film and part of the MCU. So that's why it comes in at number 23. And number 22, Thor: The Dark World, the second outing for the God of Thunder, Thor. This one really struggles with having any sort of identity. Just the villain, Malekith, is just there's not really much point in him. His motives and his ideas and the reason why he's a bad guy, they don't really add up to me. Few good things though, like Loki is fantastic in this film, as he is in any appearance that he makes in the MCU. He's the saving grace of this film. Kat Dennings is great. Portman, it's probably not one of her greatest roles. It's definitely not one that I would go back to and watch over and over again. But again, I'm going to say this about every single film. Not a bad film, just not one of the greatest films. Coming in at number 21, we have Iron Man 2, the second outing for Tony Stark in the MCU. A lot of people really don't seem to like this film, and I can understand. Whiplash, not your best villain. The change of characters for War Machine, it's a bit strange. And obviously how good Iron Man 1 was, and then to have this one come in, I can understand that overall people being a bit annoyed about it, but when it came out, it probably wasn't as disregarded as it probably is now compared to all the other films they have in the MCU. One thing I will give it that does actually have Justin Hammer in it. Justin Hammer is one of my favourite bad guys, although he's not exactly the main bad guy, but he is. He plays a big part, and I love the guy, and I wish he would come back into the MCU. So fingers crossed he does make a return somehow. But unfortunately, Iron Man 2 scores at all number 21. Coming in at number 20, we have Thor. The first outing for the God of Thunder, Thor. Not necessarily a bad film again, like I've said multiple times, but there's just something a bit jarring about it, and the way it's always all the angles are all on a tilt. It seems very theatrical, and what they wanted to achieve with it. There was good ideas there. Kenneth Branagh had some good ideas, but it just wasn't executed as well as it probably could have been. It just seemed a bit rushed as well, and a really, really short film for me. But again, it's not necessarily a bad film. Fish out of water story. Thor having to prove his power, to prove his worth, and get his powers back. Decent cast. Loki again steals the show, but overall, it's probably one of the weaker ones in the MCU, and that's why it scores so low for me. Coming in at number 19, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp. The second outing for Ant-Man with his sidekick, the Wasp. A very good film, don't get me wrong, very good film. Very good at setting up stories going forward in the MCU with the Quantum Realm and the possibility of the multiverse. Introduction of Doctor Doom or Kang, the Fantastic Four. There's a lot of implications in this franchise that help it push the MCU along, which is really good, and I really enjoyed it. And after Infinity War, it was a nice palate cleanser and served as a bit of fun without being too heavy, but also serving a good purpose as a good film in between such massive films. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Paul Rudd can't really do much wrong. Evangeline Lilly really upped her gear for this one. She was great in the first one, but she kind of found a place with this one. But unfortunately, it does actually score lower than the original Ant-Man, which leads me on to number 18, Ant-Man. Paul Rudd, like I stated in Ant-Man and the Wasp, fantastic actor, and he carries this film for me. Really good supporting cast though. After mentioned like the likes of Louise, he makes the film, like, he had a really good comedic value to it. Obviously, what you will get with a lot of Paul Rudd films, the way he bounced off Louise is really, really good and really fun. Again, big implications for the MCU when we're going forward, because you get introduced to the Quantum Realm. Obviously, just helps the story along with going in the MCU further. Doesn't really offer that much more, and nothing really original, because it's pretty much just Ant-Man. Not Ant-Man, it's just pretty much Iron Man wrapped up again as a different film called Ant-Man. So that's probably the reason why it ranks so low for me on the list. At number 17, we have Captain America: The First Avenger. A very, very good film, and a good introduction to the character of Steve Rogers. Great supporting cast, good story. Anything to do with the Nazi Germany is obviously going to be quite an interesting storyline. With it being the first film chronologically in the MCU, it does set up a nice base for the rest of the MCU. It didn't really push the boat out for me with being anything like too extravagant. It probably could have done more for me. Good characters. The Red Skull could have been better for me. I do like the fact that Red Skull come back in Infinity War and Endgame, but I feel like they could have really done more with him. And I'm glad they did in the end, but it took too long. And I'm worried it's because they didn't really do him justice in the first one. That's my opinion. Coming in at number 16, we have Guardians of the Galaxy. You thought I was going to say Volume 2 there, didn't you? For me, Guardians of the Galaxy 1 is not as good as Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, that was probably going to cause a lot of controversy, because obviously people seem to really love Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. I do too. It's a fantastic film. I just feel that Guardians 2 is slightly better than it. And when I first saw it, I was a bit I didn't think it was amazing when I first saw it. And it took me a couple more watches to really appreciate it, but I was expecting something. I don't know. Actually, I don't know what was I expecting when I first watched it, because I'd just come off the back of watching like Age of Ultron and stuff, and I was like, "Oh, this is really going to be a really good team up film," and then it just didn't really get to the heights of what I thought it was going to be, and I think it always left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth because of that reason. It's a really good film though, and the soundtrack is fantastic. Some of the smaller cast members are really, really good, like Peter Serafinowicz, fantastic actor, and great to have him in the MCU. And characters like that he plays and the dynamic that the team have is really good, but I think it really elevates in the second one. So that's the reason why this one scores so low. Coming in at number 15, we have Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel, really good film. Brie Larson's fantastic, no matter what people say. She can be robotic and unemotional for me, but I think that kind of plays on her character a bit. She's supposed to be, all the way through the film, supposed to be strong and don't show emotion, don't get too attached and all that kind of stuff. So why bash her for doing what she was told to do as a character? Because if you watch Brie Larson and other things, she's definitely not very wooden and not like that in general, as you would do with being an Academy Award-winning actor. Really good introduction to the Skrulls. Brilliant to see Nick Fury de-aged, and obviously Coulson. Obviously great to have Coulson back in any MCU film. I think that's one of the reasons why this one scores so high for me, because having Coulson back in the MCU films is a winner for me. More Coulson. And coming in at number 14, we have Avengers: Age of Ultron. The Age of Ultron is a bit disjointed and definitely did a lot to establish characters like Vision in the MCU, and great to introduce him, but Vision didn't really go any further than that. I'm not sure if that was the right time to introduce Vision and the right time to introduce Ultron. With like a bad guy like Ultron deserved a lot better. Not that it was done like badly, it just wasn't done as well as they probably could have done. The non-existent relationship between Banner and Natasha going nowhere. Like, there was not really much point in that as just kind of a storyline for that film. But why would you do that when you know you've got to go further than that? Joss Whedon did a fairly decent job to say that he had so much to do in the film, but obviously he's not going to reach the same level as Avengers Assemble. Coming in at 13, we have Iron Man 3. I bet a lot of people are very confused about why this film is so high on my list. I love Iron Man 3. I think it's fantastic. Aldrich Killian, maybe not the bad guy in the world, but he's like, you want to hate him, which I think is very cool for a bad guy. If you really, really despise a guy, it obviously means that you care a lot, and I really hate Aldrich Killian. I think it's just because he's a jackass. I really enjoyed the chemistry between Tony and the kid, and like the fact that Pepper had a big role in this film. I'm not the biggest fan of Pepper in the big MCU, but I thought obviously introducing her to be like one of the main plot focus, I really enjoyed that, and it made Tony go out of his way to really get the job done, even when it didn't look like it was going to. And Tony being Tony out of the Iron Man suit was really cool, and seeing Tony do the things he's really good at. He's good at creating things, making things, like the mansion scene where he's using all the homemade weapons. That's brilliant for me. That's like pinnacle Tony. That's him thinking outside the box and just smashing it. So for me, Iron Man 3, very cool. And it's a Christmas film as well. It was a Christmas film. Coming in at number 12, Doctor Strange. Now, Doctor Strange is one of those films that I think divides opinion. I think a lot of people either really like it or really dislike it. I'm one of the ones who really like it, and the visual aspect of it is pretty spectacular. Caecilius is not a fantastic bad guy, but it doesn't really matter because Dormammu is well cool, and I hope that Dormammu comes back in some way. Introducing the Time Stone obviously has big implications for the MCU going forward, so it's really good to establish that. Wong, fantastic character. The Ancient One, fantastic character. And Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange is just like really, really well done. Like, obviously the MCU has really, really good characters and really good actors who play these characters, but I feel like Doctor Strange and Benedict Cumberbatch, there's only like a few people you could really be like, no one was really meant to play that role apart from him, and it does a really, really good job of it. Even at the start when he's obviously being a jackass, it's really weird to see Benedict play that role. Obviously he can be a bit of a jackass in other things he's played, but not to that degree. Like Sherlock is just a bit of a pompous ass, but he's not. There's not a lot of motion in Sherlock, but there is quite a lot in Doctor Strange's character arc. So for me, I really enjoyed it and can't wait for the second one. Coming in at number 11 and just outside of the top 10, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now this is just a really, really fun film, and the soundtrack's fantastic. They like hammer in at how good these characters can bounce off each other and what makes them. Like Rocket being so stubborn but being amazing with everything that he does. Star-Lord just being effortlessly funny, but also driving home his relationship with Gamora and being vulnerable and obviously the wanting to have a father figure in his life and just completely believing anything that Ego says. Drax, again, fantastic. Baby Groot is amazing. That opening scene, dance scene is just very iconic for me. And as soon as I saw that, I had a smile on my face in the cinema, and it was fantastic. And yeah, the storyline's really good as well. No real massive qualms about that, and I do think it's a slightly better storyline than Guardians Volume 1. So the reason why it scores higher on the list. Right guys, we are now in the top 10. Are you ready for my top 10? We're kicking off with Black Panther. My man Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace, really helped bring this film to life, along with other cast members, and I was excited for this film. I knew it was going to be, a hit, but I didn't realise it was going to be this big and this significant. And it just the moments where you go into Wakanda and they go through the barrier and it opens up and you see that world and you're like, fuck, that's insane and mind blowing. And then you got like a villain like Killmonger, who, apart from like Loki and Thanos, is definitely easily one of the best MCU villains that we've ever had, with Michael B. Jordan smashing out of the park. Supporting cast like Shuri is fantastic, Okoye is fantastic, Everett Ross is phenomenal. To say that it's Martin Freeman, the guy from The Office, and he's just like this awkward, stupid character from The Office, and going on to being like really, really cool in Black Panther and part of the MCU. Obviously we got introduced in Civil War, but it was cool to have him back and have him play such a big part. And Ulysses Claw as well. Andy Serkis is a legend, and I'm gutted they had to write him out of the MCU, out of Black Panther, because it would have been great to see more of Ulysses Claw. Just that bit where he's singing "Don't Hurt Me No More" in a jail. Cracked me up every time. And then we move into the rest of the top 10. So we have number 9, we have Iron Man. What, the OG, the guy who kicked everything off. Iron Man is one of those iconic films that everybody probably should watch in his lifetime. There's things wrong with it, or there's things that they're probably not as good as they could have been if they'd have been done now. I think it's the only thing it really suffers from, maybe, it was from the age it was made in. Some of the special effects aren't amazing, but again, you can't forgive it. It was 2008, so obviously a lot has changed since then. The storyline, though, is brilliant. Jon Favreau's vision for Iron Man and what he wanted from him was executed really well. Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, again, it's an iconic role, and no one ever could play anyone as good as he can play Iron Man. He was born for the role, and it's probably one of the reasons why this film is so fantastic. One thing that I will say is I understand that Tony Stark is supposed to be a jackass, but it didn't really make me love him because of this film. In fact, this was the last film that I watched as part of the first phase, because I just had a dislike for Tony Stark. It did make me feel a bit better about him, but it wasn't until some of the later films that I'm going to talk about which made me really, really enjoy him. But it was a good stepping stone and a good platform, which again, it's supposed to be because it's the first film. You're supposed to end up liking him by the end of it, but it didn't do enough for me going forward, because obviously I've seen him in Avengers. But it's all a stepping stone into becoming the Tony Stark that I love now. Coming in at number 8, we have Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, I'm a big Spidey fanboy, so the Spider-Man films are always going to be quite high up for me. It was really refreshing to see Spider-Man in this version of him. Obviously, the little bits we get him in Civil War don't really do justice for his character. It's great seeing a teenage drama school film played out in a superhero world, where he's obviously conflicted between stuff that he needs to do because he's a superhero and other things that he has to do because he's a teenager and has stupid crushes and has to go about his day without people really knowing who he is. Michael Keaton as the Vulture, chef's kiss, fantastic. Zendaya as MJ, really cool, really fun, and yeah, just a really, really, really cool film. And I'm so glad that they managed to do a first Spider-Man film in a franchise without having to kill Uncle Ben. It was refreshing to see, and I loved it. Coming in at number 7, Captain America the Winter Soldier. Now, a lot of people are probably going to be confused about why this one is lower down compared to some of the other Captain America films. Well, only one more. But for me, it's not as good as a third outing of Captain America. It is, however, such a good film. And I don't think I'd ever watched an MCU film before this that kind of twist and turned as much and had more of an identity than any other film, like it being like a spy thriller. And I think if you watch this film on its own, it could definitely just be a spy film without it having to be like a part of the MCU. Obviously, you take the Captain America get up and Falcon get up and all that kind of stuff, and yeah, fair enough, it is a superhero film. But if you take away some of the costumes and stuff and put the storyline in there and remove some of the superhero tropes, then yeah, it could be just a fantastic spy film. It could even be on the scale of Bond for me. It was just really, really cool, and really good to see Natasha and Cap's relationship grow and change. And then Nick Fury, it's brilliant in it as well. Obviously, you can't really go wrong with having Nick Fury in your MCU films. And yeah, just overall Really, really enjoyable film. And coming in at number 6, we have Avengers Assemble, or just Avengers if you live outside of the UK. This was the first MCU film I ever saw, and it was mind-blowingly great. I didn't really know that much about comic book films apart from the Spider-Man films at this point. I'd seen a couple of X-Men films. I saw the trailer for this and was genuinely excited for it. So I went to the cinema, saw it, was blown away by it, and then went backwards and watched the other MCU films because of it, and that's kind of what kicked off this whole journey for me. Unfortunately, it doesn't get the number 1 spot because of the other films that are above it are actually better than it. But as far as superhero films go, and as far as superhero team-up films go, it's definitely up there with one of the best of all time. And I don't think anyone can really argue with that. Because everyone thought it wasn't going to work, but it clearly did. And the way the characters bounce off each other was really well done. And you didn't think that it was going to be really well done. It was going to be really forced and smashed and just not really make much sense. But it really did. And hats off to Joss Whedon, because he did a really good job at pulling this off. And the implications going forward for the MCU, and obviously the introduction of Thanos and the Chitauri and Loki being just the savage bad guy, and just one that you can really understand why he's doing it, because he just wanted to rule, and he couldn't rule Asgard, so it had to be Earth, and he just felt like he just really wanted that, but obviously he was just being used as a puppet for a higher power, obviously a higher, more badass power than Loki himself. Okay guys, we're rocking into the top 5 now. So, coming in at number 5, Captain America Civil War. Essentially another Avengers film for me, but just one that was incredible and just really a really emotional driven film for one of these MCU films. Obviously Tony having to learn how to deal with finding out who killed his parents, and Cap standing his ground about protecting his friend when he knew he wasn't in the wrong. There's no point in arguing about who's right or wrong, because they're both wrong. Realistically, they're both wrong, because if you think about it, there was other things at play that they really should have seen through. Being Avengers and being the people that they are and the job that they do, you'd have thought that they'd been able to keep it together and realise they were being played, but obviously they don't. But that was obviously the plot of the film. Again, the introduction of Black Panther and Spider-Man was really cool, and you're seeing Ant-Man come into the fold, and them all fighting in the airport is just one of the most epic scenes in a film you're ever going to get. It was just so good. So good. And the character development that the Russo brothers did, obviously they directed the first 2 Captain America films, but they did something in this film that I'd never had before, which was make me like Tony Stark. He's very responsible getting Spider-Man involved, but he had finally had intentions that were good, and I could empathise with the guy. And I don't know, it's just one of those things. There's a really cool documentary that someone's made on YouTube. I can't remember who made it, but I'll put it in the description below, about how Tony's arc has changed throughout these films, and this was the turning point for him. And he's not a jackass in this film, really. He has questionable moments, but it's not like what it's like in Iron Man 1, 2, 3, and Age of Ultron is a dick. And obviously in Avengers 1 he's a bellend. So this was like one of those things where my eyes really opened during this, as to like the potential for what Tony Stark could do going forward. He obviously always could make the big sacrifice, but I feel like his motives and his choices were definitely widened because of this. And Baron Zemo, corking bad guy. And it's going to be mint having him back in the MCU when we finally get Falcon the Winter Soldier next year. And coming in at number 4, Spider-Man Far From Home. After the big events of Avengers Endgame, how was our friendly neighbourhood Spider-Man going to deal with the death of his mentor and all-around badass Iron Man? Everyone asking, is he going to be the new Iron Man? After the first half an hour, I don't think it was really part of the storyline. I think, but that's how they advertised it was going to be. It's just taking Spider-Man, making him deal with teenage things, but taking him out of New York was really, really fun for me. And just seeing him being in Europe, which is cool because, I mean, we don't always get a lot of European stuff with superhero films. They're normally just New York, America based. It's cool to see them come to places like London, although London always gets mentioned. If you go to England, it's always London. They never come to Manchester. Just come to Manchester at one point. Any superhero. It'd be cool. Knock around Northern Quarter, it'd be belting. Apart from that though, really good, really, really enjoyable film. Good development of the characters, his development and his relationship with MJ. Obviously setting up something going forward. Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal, what a combination. Really good. And the fact that you knew Mysterio was going to turn a bad guy at some point, but you don't know when. You knew it was going to happen, but when it did happen, you were still like, oh shit. And the reveal of everyone being past Stark employees was just, again, so well crafted and really, really, really good. Such a good film. And it's weird to think that was the last MCU film that we've had. It's been like a year and a bit now. Come on! Anyway, that's a mint film. On to the top 3. Coming in at number 3. Avengers Endgame. Now, a lot of people's favourite film of the MCU, and I can completely understand why. Because it's amazing. And what it does is it cements all the films we just spoke about, and the other 2 that we're going to announce, into one tiny little, awesome, not tiny, also very long film, but one perfectly formed film that just makes you feel good and just resets everything and puts everything back to normal, but also has some slight implications going forward. It's an emotional roller coaster of a film that just ties everything from everywhere into one film, and it's brilliant. Great to see the original cast back in there and the film just be about them guys saving the day, and then just having such iconic moments and just the biggest fan pop moments, like with Cap with the Mjolnir and Avengers Assemble, and the bit where they come through the portal, and Jarvis from Jarvis from Agent Carter, being in the film, the first ever person from a TV show making it into the films. Good job. That was my big pop. I loved that. But again, just Avengers Endgame is it's just one of those films, and that it will go down in history as one of the best of all time to a lot of people. It's not the best of all time for me, but that's because there's 2 more films that are better than it. But you can probably guess which one they are. So, without further ado, coming in at number 2. It's my favourite God of Thunder. Your favourite God of Thunder, Thor Ragnarok. Taika Waititi breathed a whole new lease of life into Thor as a character, and my word, did it deliver. Holy shitballs. What a film. Loki, fantastic. Thor, fantastic. Korg, fantastic. Meek, fantastic. The Grandmaster, fantastic. Valkyrie, fantastic. Hulk, fantastic. Scourge, fantastic. Just the list, everybody in that film is just amazing. Hela, fantastic. Kate Blanchett, never been fit ever to me. Well fit as Hela. Who knows why? She just is. Because you know why? It's a fantastic film. Fun. Visually, like, mesmerising what they managed to do with the colours and the architecture of some of the buildings. It's all very Steve Ditko based, I believe. Steve Ditko? Yes, Steve Ditko based. Such a funny film as well. And the development of the characters and just having Hulk become more human-like because of the way he's obviously been Hulk for so long, and actually developing speech was really, really fun and really cool. And again, just made Hulk a bit cooler, because at this point I really could have taken all even Hulk. Didn't really care much for the guy. He had some good moments, but Thor Ragnarok really redeemed both Thor and Hulk and made it a really fun film in between. So yeah, well, cool. And then it leads into the best film of all time. Coming in at number 1, Avengers Infinity War. Why is Avengers Infinity War better than Endgame? I'm going to tell you why. There has never been a film for me that has managed to fit as many characters into one film without making it horrendously awful and convoluted and having pointless people being in pointless scenes. There's a reason for all these characters to be in this film, and the way they interact in the little groups that they form in the film is just so good. And it's how they managed to put it together and piece it together is amazing to me. Having people like Iron Man interact with Star-Lord and Drax and Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, and then you've got like Captain America and Black Panther and Vision and Wanda. It was just really, really, really well done. And there's not a lot of films that if I walk into a film or someone's watching a film, if that film is on, I will finish that film no matter what is going on. When my housemate was watching these films for the first time, he started watching this film at like 1 o'clock in the morning. I had to work at like 8 the next day. I watched the first half an hour. I watched the whole thing because there's no way I could leave without watching the whole thing. It's just a perfect film for me. Funny. And emotional. And I've never ever left a film in the cinema where I've actually felt like empty and just never really been hit like that at all. Like I was a bit numb when I left the cinema after finding out what happened, and you watch it unfold and you're just like, what? And you don't know kind of what to do for the next couple of days. It was such a strange feeling, and I still get like a bit of a like a taken back and a bit of a shock moment every time I see it, and it still gives me like goosebumps and stuff when I watch it just for the ending, because you don't expect that to come and hit you so hard. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's so amazing, because again, the heroes don't win. You knew there was going to be a second part, which they probably are going to win, but all the way through the film you're thinking, no, this is the moment that they're going to come back, this is the moment they're going to come back. And then obviously when Thor comes through with Stormbreaker and it goes through Thanos' chest, and you're thinking, yes, he's got it. And then he snaps, and then that's like, whoa, what the hell has just happened? So it's such a heavy film, but it's such a funny film. It's just one of those films. It's amazing. So there you have it, guys. That is my list of the MCU films from worst to best. So we have Hulk down at the bottom, and we have Avengers Infinity War at the top. So there you have it, guys. That was my breakdown of the whole of the MCU films in a list compiled. Now, I understand you guys are going to have a completely different view and different opinion of my list, and I definitely want to hear about it. So make sure you leave your grievances, or if you agree with me, which I can't imagine a lot of people are going to do, but I mean, if you do, make sure you comment below, or make sure you leave a comment in the review or in the description of the podcast. It's been fantastic for you to be here again. Again, make sure you like and subscribe, share the podcast, and yeah, we'll see you next week. Hopefully with some better MCU news and anything to talk about. Oh, probably Hellstrom. That'll be the next topic, because that will be previewed. Or fingers crossed, the UK will have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season 7. See you next time, guys. Bye.
This podcast is part of the That Thing You Might Like network. Here's something you might like. Find us on socials at TTYL Network.